And I'll start with the following just sort of broad comment. The venture capital industry has been under severe stress in Canada, and I believe it's under some duress in Italy. Various organizations in Canada have actually declared the venture capital industry to be in extreme distress, perhaps even broken. And there's a vicious cycle in place with respect to our venture capital sector in Canada. I won't take you through what the elements of that vicious cycle are, but one of them is that we have weak linkages with global experts, markets, and businesses regarding venture capital. The Jenkins panel report on research and development and innovation, which was released late last year, highlighted this particular vicious cycle, and in particular this element. Well, we happen to have a group of experts here, but in particular we have Alessia with us. And so with respect to the Canadian venture capital industry, which is, as I said, under duress, for which there was $400 million of funding recently announced by the finance minister for venture capital through our business development corporation. We're just wondering, Alessia, if you could give us a brief run through on the state of the venture capital sector in Italy, and in particular, what kind of model does Italy actually use in its approach to funding VenCap startups, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the ambassador and all the people organizing this event, which I think is an important opportunity to speak about innovation and to tell you something about the role of venture capital in Italy. IFI is the Italian private equity and venture capital activity, which was born in the mid-80s to promote venture capital and private equity activity, not only in Italy, but also abroad, cooperating with other institutions and associations. IFI has more or less 120 members, so it is not as big as other associations. And so the market is not so well developed as in other European countries, not considering, of course, the United States. But since the beginning, in the mid-80s, when a small group of specialized players formed our association, the market has grown quite steadily, reaching a peak in 2008 when more than 5 billion euros has been invested in our country. But then, of course, the international financial and economic crisis affected also our market, and we saw between 2009 and 2010 a strong slowdown of the activity, especially considering buyout activity, whereas venture capital showed important signs, positive signs, and with a growing trend that did not come to a halt even between 2009 and 2010. And we have to say that even if this market is not so developed as France or other European countries, even considering the fact that it is quite new in comparison with other countries, this market is very important in terms of growing trend, and as in the other advanced economy, the most important sectors for investments are innovative ones. For example, computer, biotech, and medical sectors that can be crucial for the future of our country. And we have to say that 2 out of 3 deals made in this sector, in this kind of market in venture capital, concern companies operating in high-tech sectors. And this is very important for our market. And we have to say that some research has demonstrated that these have important effects on companies. For example, a recent research that we conducted together with Bank of Italy demonstrated the positive effects of private equity and venture capital on the definition of the strategies of a company and in terms of financial strategies and policies for the company itself. And another important research that we conducted demonstrated that this translates in positive results in terms of economic and financial indicators, with a growth which is higher than the sample of similar-sized companies that we use to make a comparison. So we can say that in Italy there is an innovative system developing also for what concerns venture capital. Now we can say that this activity is also in the political agenda of our government. We are very proud to say this because we worked hard together with institutions, for example, for the creation of a venture capital fund of fund, and we hope that this will become something real in our country. And we know that a lot of work still needs to be done in our country to improve this private equity and venture capital activity, but we are seeing important and encouraging signs, and initiatives like this one can be very helpful for our system.
Thank you, Alicia. Just a quick follow-up. Is Italy following a particular venture capital model from another country in instituting your own model? For example, in our country, some people have suggested looking at the Israeli model, the New Zealand model. I'm just wondering, of venture capital formation and the distribution of public funds to entrepreneurs who don't necessarily want to take funds from government. So I'm just wondering what kind of model are you looking at?
First of all, we have to say that our market is very new. So we have to form a venture capital market. Especially you have to consider that every year we have more or less 180 players interested in Italian companies, but only from 10 to 12 are venture capitalists, and so this is a small number. We have a growing number of generalist players interested in early stage activity, but we still have to develop a real model of venture capital activity in Italy. We are working on this with institutions, for example, trying to strengthen the market with a venture capital fund of funds. But a lot of work still needs to be done. For example, trying to copy, in a sense, Israel and other systems which are well developed in this sense.
Thank you very much, and thanks for taking the time to be with us today. We know that you have to.
Yeah, thank you to you, and sorry, but I have to leave.
Problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Madame Fortier, your name has been mentioned a few times in the last 2 days. Both last night and, of course, this morning. So just a very broad question to you, Madame Fortier, as the head of a very important institution, NSERC, in the Canadian Innovation Scheme. What is the role of NSERC in the Canadian Innovation Agenda for the benefit of our Italian friends who are here with us today? And perhaps a follow-up question in due course.
Grazie per la domanda. Let me start by saying just a few words about NSERC. We're a funding agency. We have an annual budget of over $1 billion, and we invest these monies wisely in our universities and colleges in Canada. And we have 3 priority areas, and I think they're all important for innovation. The first 2 are really the foundation. We invest in people, making sure we have the talent we need in this country, but we also invest in making sure these people can unleash their creative power. And that's the funding of basic research. And then the third area is innovation, and it is bringing the talent and the creativity, the expertise of these people to the benefit of industry and society so that we can all work together. Now, it's been said already, but I think it needs to be repeated over and over. Innovation is a team sport. And so what we try to promote in our innovation activities is the creation of partnerships that are dynamic, effective, very high-performing, highly competitive, and sustainable. And that's very important, too. If you help form a partnership, but it cannot last, the conditions are not good for its survival, then you really haven't accomplished what you need to accomplish. So sustainability of these partnerships is very important. I think we all know, and it's been said, that for innovation and to form a very effective team in innovation, you need to bring people of different expertise, different disciplines in the academic world. You need to bring people from different sectors, and you need to bring people from different nations as well. So that is part of what we try to do. Now, the topic is about funding of innovation. And of course, money is extremely important. We hear that all the time. But time is equally important. And I would say, in fact, that when I look at what's happening in our country and around the world, the biggest hurdle is not money, it's time. If you're going to forming a good, strong partnership require an investment of time. And we're all extremely busy. And I think this is important for people who do the job I do to remember that we have to increase our agility and our flexibility so that we do not waste people's time. That is extremely important. My colleagues were wonderful in mentioning the program CREATE this morning. CREATE, to me, is an example of flexibility. We don't tell people what to do, what kind of team to bring together, which professors, from which discipline, which sectors, and so on. They do what they think is best for the area that the program is focusing on. The only rule we have is that 80% of the money must end in the pocket of students. The rest, it is a very, very flexible program. Another example, and we have developed this program because we have consulted with companies, consulted with our researchers in our universities and colleges. Another program is Engage, and its equivalent in the college sector. I call it the First Date program. That's my name for it. But it is to encourage people to come together in the first interaction and see if there is any value in them developing a partnership. So it has to be flexible, it has to be fast, it has to be focused, again, so that nobody is wasting their time and money, but have a real opportunity to see if there's a good partnerships. I will end with one additional observation, and that's, again, an observation of, that comes from what we've heard from both academic researchers and companies. There's no one size fits all. And so you have to have a set of tools that can be there to promote these partnerships at different stage of the formation of the partnership with different types of companies. Different sectors have different needs. Different size companies have different needs. And you will see that in our suite of tools, there are some that are just to bring two people together, as well as large tools that bring many people together in networks and centers. There are many people here who are scientific director and head of some of those networks and centers. So there are different kinds of tools, and they have to be there at the right time for growing these partnerships.
Thank you, Madame Fortier. And if we have time, hopefully in the Q&A, we'll come back to the question of focus and priorities, which is extremely important when you're talking about money. Speaking of money, we have with us from UniCredit Alessandro Laporta, and appreciate you taking the time, sir, to be with us today. UniCredit is a financial entity in 22 countries, 160,000 employees, and about 10,000 branches, if I'm not correct. In 2010-11, UniCredit implemented a 1-4C model of leadership in the provision of financial products from Germany, Austria, Poland towards Italy. So obviously, Mr. Laporta, you need to make money. You're a bank. You need to make a profit in this very tough economic environment. And the stresses that extend to loans that you may make for startups and spin-offs is even more so, especially when you need to make money. Can you please give us your perspective, sir, on how you manage financial initiatives and targeted priorities for startup companies from your perspective as territorial head for UniCredit?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Let me spend some few words not only about UniCredit. I thank you a lot for having explained what UniCredit means, that is an international group present in 50 countries. But it's very important, and I'm so grateful to take part in this conference to talk about a particular approach of UniCredit in selecting and supporting innovative startups. Let me say that innovation is one of a key pillar of the strategic plan of UniCredit. It is based on 5 pillars. The other ones are internationalization, integration, network creation, equity injection, and infrastructure. Innovation is considered a driver for growth of client companies and local economies, and a key pillar in order to meet evolving customer needs. In order to implement our strategy on innovation, UniCredit has dedicated teams with specific targets and expertise. In particular, the team I lead is focused on entrepreneurial projects led and launched before by young talents. We have structured an initiative very prestigious called Il Talento delle Idee, the talent of ideas. The main target of Il Talento delle Idee is to support highly innovative startups and generally entrepreneurial projects launched and led, as I said before, by young people. It is structured as a national business plan competition in partnership with the main Italian association of young entrepreneurs named Confindustria Giovani, and addressed to young talents and startups, maximum 3-year-old companies. It involves territorial selection in 7 regions of our country, and finally, one selection at national level to identify the best startups of our country. Let me explain some key characteristics of the Talento delle Idee. Starting from scouting process, we cooperate with more than 300 Italian innovation centers, such as business incubators, universities, scientific parks, and so on, for the participation of the best business ideas and startups within their networks. In terms of documentation to be submitted, we ask, we are a bank, to the startups a structured set of information in the form of a complete business plan with details on the innovative characteristic of the projects, company structure, commercial and operational strategy, economic and financial projection, and all relevant information in order to capture the potential of the startups. The selection is based on an in-house scoring model able to associate a specific score to the business ideas and project presented, and on several committees on entrepreneurs and experts of innovation. What are the awards? The best startups, together with the innovative ideas, are awarded with, first of all, tailor-made training programs for the selected talents involving qualified professionals to improve managerial and entrepreneurial skills, one-to-one meetings with investors, permanent tutorship programs, internally, thanks to UniCredit Relationship Manager, and externally, thanks to professionals and entrepreneurs able to follow the startups in their developments. And finally, money awards and tailored finance. Let me underline a key point of the project. The 2 main characteristics of the projects are, in my opinion, on one end, using UniCredit and Il Talento delle Idee as a sort of platform, infrastructure, able to link key partners such as investors, entrepreneurs, consultants, professionals, the bank, with the selected startup to enable their growth. On the other end, developing a tutorship programs on a long-term basis thanks to a club of voluntary mentors supporting the startups through their life cycles. Some key numbers, more than 700 startup evaluated in 2 years, 150 considered with high potential, more than 200 one-to-one meetings between startups and potential partner, investors, strategic institutions, and recurring meetings between young entrepreneurs and UniCredit experts. As an example of the startups selected through this project, today in the afternoon session, you can have the opportunity to meet the Orbit, a startup in the aerospace sector. I'm sure that you will find it really interesting. Coming back to your answer, not easy at all to finance a startup. It's, let me say, quite risky, but I would like to underline in this conference that we created 2 specific products 2 years ago, named Innova and Ricerca, Innovation and Research. Thanks to them, we had the possibility to finance several startups overall Italy, thanks to our score model that is able to associate an evaluation of the projects that our credit analysts take in a great consideration. Thank you for your attention. I'm here for every question.
Thank you, Mr. Laporta. It's still impressive, 700 projects. That's a very impressive number. This is a very high-powered panel, a very impressive panel, but I'm especially privileged to be on this panel, of course, with Madame Forci and the rest of these individuals. But Mr. Patry has had a very august career and runs now a very important foundation, the Foundation for Innovation, which is an important part of the Canadian innovation firmament. He funds innovation infrastructure, if I may, and so using a very creative model. And so, Mr. Patry, if you could please briefly tell the audience about the foundation, about the various funds that you use, and your partnering model.
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sam, for the question. And first of all, let me start by congratulating and thanking His Excellency Ambassador Meloni for being able to gather such a group of wonderful individuals and to allow this time for interchange. I've got the pleasure and the privilege, as was mentioned, of heading a wonderful organization that's called the Canada Foundation for Innovation. And CFI, as we call it, is based on the premise that you cannot do world-class research without having access to state-of-the-art facilities. And so the Canada Foundation for Innovation was created in 1997 to support research infrastructure in universities, research hospitals, and colleges. So we fund equipment, tools, and facilities, and I'm sure there are many installations on this campus that you can attribute to the contributions that CFI has made. Our funding model is rather unique. We fund 40% of the cost of research infrastructure. Institutions must secure the other 60%. And as a former university president, I can tell you that everybody loves a 40-cent dollar. Because you can leverage that with your other organizations, such as the provincial government, the industrial partners that come to the table, as well as the institutions who put in some of their own resources into our models and into our investments. So far, we've invested in Canada, and I'll talk about some of the international investment. We've invested $6.7 billion in the last 13 years of operation in research infrastructure, and which translates in about $12 to $13 million of equipment, tools, and facilities. So $1 billion a year has been put into play. The one thing I want to emphasize, and it's a point that Suzanne made, is that research takes time, and research infrastructure also takes time to build. There's a lag between the, when we're talking about innovation, we're talking about the end of the spectrum. And in Canada, we've been extremely fortunate in the last 12 to 15 years to see some massive investments in research. The granting councils, of which Suzanne is the president of NSERC, has received between the year 2000 and 2010 more than a threefold increase in budget. So they went from $800 million to $2.7 billion a year of investments, which is absolutely fantastic. When you add to that the CFI, in order to bring in the tools and instruments to foster this creativity in universities and research hospitals, that combination is really, really extraordinary. The challenge is that it takes time. You know, when we make an award of a few $1 million at a university, it can take, before they find the complementary funding, it can take about a year before they can sign with us that they have secured the funding. Then they have to build the facility. That takes another 2, 3, 4 years. So and then the researchers come in and do the research. And that takes 2 or 3 years. So there is a very important lag. And the one thing that we are discovering right now in Canada is I think we're starting to reap the benefits of these investments that we have made successively since 1997 in our case, up till now. And last week, when the Council of Canadian Academies released their report on the productivity of Canadian research across the country, there were stellar numbers in there. And I would attribute those stellar numbers to historical investments that have been made. But the situation is very fragile. It's fragile because we have to sustain these investments, and we have to guarantee that the researchers, the people, because it's really, I want to emphasize that it's really people who innovate. It's not organizations, it's not NSERC, it's not CFI, it's people who innovate. But our role is to provide them with the tools and the facilities to do stellar research and to do discoveries. So it's very, very interesting. At CFI, I think we've tried to listen to what the community has been telling us in the investments that we have made. We have made investments, obviously, in Canada. Most of our investments have been made in Canada, but we have funded international investments in physics, in particle physics, in health around the world, for AIDS research in Africa, the Spallation Lab at Oak Ridge. We were instrumental in funding the Atlas facility at Triumph to support CERN research. And I know in our current competition that there is a proposal to support the Super B facility in Italy. I don't know if it's going to be successful. I can't tell you the outcome of this, but these are investments that can be made, yes, in Canada mostly. 99% of our investments are made in Canada, but some of our investments are made internationally also. So this idea of sharing with our Italian colleagues, I think, is a very welcome opportunity for CFI.
Thank you, Mr. Patry. Be interested to follow up on how you make your choices, because patient capital, as has been discussed by especially Madame Fortier and yourself, capital needs to be patient, especially with respect to investment, but you need to make choices. And so I'd like to be able to follow up a little later. Once we finish with our other three speakers, I'd like to follow up on how you make your choices, and because money is definitely in some limited value. Riccardo Pietrabisa is president of NetVal, which is part of another very proud Italian learning institution, Politecnico di Milano, established a short while ago in 1863, I believe. President Pietrabisa, can you tell us about NetVal and tell us about your model, your unique model of innovation and funding for spin-offs?
Yes, thank you for your question. Let me thank the Italian Embassy for organizing this meeting, and in particular the Ambassador Meloni for that. And I'd like to start briefly remembering a lesson taught by Jeff Nicholson, who has been a vice president in 3M. And he talked about research and innovation, and he said during a lesson in Imperial College some years ago that research is the transformation of money into knowledge, and innovation is the transformation of knowledge into money. So the question of the value of money and research is that they need each other. And so the global vision, money and knowledge and the research of innovation is not to be divided in, I am interested in one of that. The two together is important. For what? The Netval model now is to think that the main goal is the country wealth, that is the benefit that research and money can give in terms of social, economical, industrial, cultural benefit for the country. And this requires that all the parties that are on the table agree on put together efforts in order to improve. So what we are trying to do is to define the role of university in this project, so public research. Netval now is an association with 57 members. Among that, we have 54 universities and 3 public research organizations. Well, this is National Research Council. And what we do now is making a monitor of the capability to give value to the research results. The problem is how the research results can promote benefit and innovation in the country. Now in Italy, in the last 10 years, we have obtained from public research about 2,600 new patents, and is a very big amount of industrial property that can be used in some way. So the question is how to manage this group of patents. And we try to adopt some models in which patents are clusterized by particular focus and technology and put in together in order to advantage people that can, and companies can promote new technologies for the market. And the second is to evaluate the capability of spin-off from research in order to push technology on the market. Now we have in Netval, in the university, in the members of Netval, about 1,000 of spin-off, but they are very small. One of the difficulty in Italy now for spin-offs coming from research is the growth that is very, very low. The access to the market, which is very, very difficult. They are very weak on the market, these companies. So recently, it's been established a new foundation in Italy, which is called Foundation for Research and Entrepreneurship. The members of this foundation are Intesa San Paolo, which is a bank, a very large bank in Italy, and 3 large companies, which are Finmeccanica, Enel, and Telecom Italia, which is a company dealing in different areas, and 3 research organizations, which are Italian Institute of Technology, Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna, e Fondazione Politecnico di Milano, and also Netval is participated to this foundation. The role of foundation is to give a selection of spin-off, so to establish also a ranking of spin-off as also Unicredit does, and promote this spin-off in an acceleration process that comes from financial support from the financial institution and tutoring in large company. The tutoring is important for access to the market and also to make capability to exploit particular technologies and to be able to test the idea in a term of this foundation is started very recently, less than 1 year ago. So we at night try to enroll spin-off from research, but we have a large amount of that. So we hope that in the near future we will be able to give a monitor of these kind of activities.
And so is the focus of the startups based on the 3 or 4 companies that are involved in the foundation, or do you have a broader sectoral approach?
Well, at present, the principal focus are those of the company that are in the foundation, because this is easy for us to make evaluation and to put the spin-off in the process. But we are thinking now to to enlarge the panel of partners of the foundation in other fields. In
Thank
particular, the field are telecommunication, energy, and mechanics.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Kaur is president of the Ontario Centres of Excellence. They accelerate innovation, and they try and fund commercialization and vibrant collaborations with industry and academia. Mr. Kaur, would you be so kind, please, as to give us a broad overview of the Ontario Centres of Excellence? And as per the question to Mr. Pietrabisa, choices that you have made vis-a-vis sectors or a cross-sectoral approach that you may be taking with respect to funding of innovative startups as you lead this very important organization in Ontario.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you for the privilege of being here to talk to everybody today. At the Ontario Centres of Excellence, we're celebrating our 25th year, and our mandate for all of those years is basically to work with industry to get intellectual property developed at the academic institutions in Ontario that industry can take to create economic outcomes, be it jobs, GDP, and export. So our clients are the companies that we work with, and it could be a one-person startup right to a very, very large organization. And the driving underpinnings of what we do, again, has got to be the economic outcomes that are going to come from the research that is done at the academic institutions in Ontario. The business model that we use is that we receive applications from the academic institutions in conjunction with the industry partners, and they have to at least match us dollar for dollar for the investment that we make in the research. So we really, as part of our model, have two primary outcomes. One is the jobs and the economic activity that are created in the province, and secondarily, because all of this intellectual property is being developed at academic institutions in Ontario, it's a great experience for the students and the professors to get real-world experience, and many, literally hundreds and hundreds every year, end up going to work for the companies that we have co-funded the research with. So that's basically how we work. Our as Suzanne mentioned, the key for us these days, as with most organizations like us, intermediaries, is partnering. So we work very closely with our friends at NSERC, the National Centres of Excellence, IRAP, FedDev, the name and the list can go on and on and on, to make sure that at the right time we've got the right money through the right programs to move these opportunities forward, especially when we're dealing with small companies and SMEs and startups. Our focus tends to be, although we're not limited to it, in advanced manufacturing, energy and environment, IT, and advanced health. So we're very much aligned with our key funder, which is the province, in terms of what their priorities are. And so in terms of dealing with small companies, we've been fortunate to partner with a number of organizations like IRAP, like FedDev, the National Centres of Excellence through their CSER program, where we can take funding and provide it to these small companies to give them the seed financing that they need to move forward. In the past, our focus was simply on getting the intellectual property developed at the academic institutions. Now our mandate has been expanded to include moving these very small companies that we're involved with, which is about where half of our money goes, into the marketplace. And that's key to make them successful. There's no point in having intellectual property developed, getting in the hands of a small company if the company's not going to succeed. So working with our other government agency partners, we have access to capital that we can provide the seed financing and do what we call getting them venture capital ready. A couple of weeks ago, we were proud to enter into a relationship with OMERS Venture Capital, which sees them providing capital to selective opportunities, startups that we're involved with, that meet their focus and their model, which is basically large growth, big opportunities. And so they're not going to fund every opportunity that we're involved with, but ones that fit their model. So basically, we're there to, in summary, we're there to work with industry, to get product from the academic institutions, the colleges, universities, and research hospitals in the province, get that into their hands so they can create jobs, GDP, and economic development. And with the small companies that we work with, try and provide the first round of financing of seed capital to get them ready. And basically, we always focus our seed capital very specifically, and typically it's on embedded executives. So we will not provide them simply with capital and have them move forward, because typically if these companies are founded by researchers and students coming out of school, that money will always end up back doing more research, because more research solves all problems, according to most of these students. But in fact, what we will say to them, if we're going to give you X amount of dollars, we're going to pick an embedded executive with years of sales experience, marketing experience, CEO experience, finance experience. We're going to fund them for a year in your organization, and that's how your company is going to move forward. So we tend to be very directive, because we know that's going to get the outcomes that we're looking for, as opposed to just putting more money in the company so they can do more R&D. So in a nutshell, that's what we do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Court. Just to follow up, you mentioned, did you say OMERS Venture Capital?
Yes.
Could you explain briefly to the audience OMERS, the OMERS institution?
Yeah, OMERS is the Ontario Municipal Employees Research Pension Fund, and they manage, I think, about $3.5 billion in funding. Recently, in the last year and a half or so, they created OMERS Ventures, which is a venture capital fund, and they literally invest as amounts as small as $500,000 in startups. And that's the group that we're dealing with. And again, but they're very specific about where they want their money to go. It's not going to go into the average mom and pop little company that's going to create 5 jobs over 10 years. They want to see explosive growth. They want to see opportunities to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in that company, which is a good thing as it takes on the international market. So we're just very privileged to be partnered with them. And in fact, Michael Nobrega, who's their CEO, is our incoming new chairman.
And so you're levering your own pot of money with vast
Yes,
resources of the
that's
pension,
correct.
public sector pension plan, in order to be able to sort of multiply the impact of...
Well, multiply the impact. It's always a co-investment. Their money will go in with ours. But just as importantly, these people have committed to mentor our companies, to help move them along. And it's that kind of expertise brought to the table that really helps these companies much more than just providing them with capital.
Thank you very much. I'm of Greek descent, and so I was brought up to say that the last shall be first and the first shall be last. Mr. De Maio, thank you for your patience. You are president of ARIA, Science Park of Trieste, which is a multi-sector science park. And as you can see, I mean, one of the key themes that I've been trying to raise is institutions such as your own and all these institutions that are represented today, including the private sector, do need to make choices, and you've obviously made choices with respect to the industries that are represented in your science park and your model of support. I was wondering if you could please give us a general description of this very, very innovative model that stands at the crossroads between 3 or 4 countries. And so it sounds like a very interesting institution that you run.
First of all, I want to thank the organizers of this meeting, in particular His Excellence, our ambassador in Canada from Italy, and for inviting us for presenting our experience. We are not so lucky as in Canada because the percentage of GDP for research in our state of Italy is the lowest in the Western country. So unfortunately, all the kind of government, left, right, and they gave no attention, in my opinion, to research and also to higher education. And this is very damaging for us because historically, Italy was a very important country for both for higher education and for research. I hope that in the future, but now the situation, actually the situation is not so good for increasing the investment in research. But with this kind of problem, some years ago, more than 20 years ago, Area Science Park at Trieste was founded for one mission: increasing the attractiveness of the territory. Because in my opinion, now the competitiveness is between the territory. Well, territory is not only local, but in a very broad and large sense. some sense with the Western countries and the East countries and so on, with Latin America, with other parts. And this problem is to increase the attractiveness by means of research and companies science and technology based. So our activities is subdivided into two parts. One part is mainly focused on research, on basic research, and is managed in very autonomy from the other part, because the main facility is the synchrotron. It's one of the most important in Europe, and is devoted all to research in physics and so on, in materials. But there will be a change also in this part. And more or less there are mainly 900 people, at least, with a change, continuous change from over the world. And there is only, I suppose, not only more than 15% of Italian people, of Italian researchers. They are coming from all the world in Europe and outside. And they are completely autonomous. The other part is devoted to this kind of connecting research with companies and with market and business. And our strategy is focused on these topics. The first of all is the choice of mainly topics. And for making this, we need and we have a very important work on science, technology, and business foresight in connection with the CNR. And the CNR is giving us mainly the part of science and technology foresight, and we are in the second part, technology and business foresight, because we say not only the problem of what will be in science and technology, but what will be the market needs in the future, as was mentioned by Gino Nicolais before. And so we need this fact. Up to now, we have, in some sense, some topics, some problem-driven, like, for instance, health, the mainly one, agri-food, environment, and energy, and also the maintenance of historical heritage. Because for Italy, but I do think for all the world, maintaining the historical heritage is very important. And for instance, one of the first applications of nanomaterials was the restoring of a fresco of Paolucello. And so also the maintaining of historical heritage is very important, connecting with technology. It's not subdivided. It's not arts from one side and technology from the other side. Because the second focus is the co-location. The co-location of industries and research laboratories, because we do think that the richness is the diversity. Is the diversity in different disciplines, but also in the culture coming from research, culture from business. And we create the environment for connecting, for the marriage. I said that we want to have a marriage between two different cultures and many different disciplines. This is the fact that's very important with the continuous. They are working together, they are living together in the same place, and the co-location, in our view, is very, very important. And so we need that technological transfer means that there will be a newborn due to the cooperation, strictly cooperation between different genders. And different genders are companies and technology and research. The third one is the great support by local government. Not only local government near Trieste, but also with the general government. But only 1/3 of our funds is given by the minister. 2/3 we receive by ourselves, selling our services, because the service is very important. And the last thing is to define what will be the territories and the market for the innovation. And this is a very important point because Trieste, I don't know if you know where is it, Trieste in Italy, is the northern east part, and was the historical harbor of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And so it's a natural gateway to the Central Europe and East Europe. All these factors very important, and they knows that Trieste is the gateway. And so we do think that we have a lot of connection with other countries outside Italy, and I hope that there will be the opportunity also for Canadian, both for research and also for companies, to have some points in Trieste, because it's very important with the very important market, new market for the Eastern Europe, coming from Poland to Turkey, and this is a fact. At the end of this, I won't say that due to the fact that this model works. There is they ask us from some regions, Italian regions, and also from different states, to give the support, the consultancy, for creating this kind of park, this kind of. We have 3 regions now in Italy and 2 states up to now, and we will increase. If I will spend only other 2 words with the title, due to the fact that the problem of spin-off, it's not new. Because I was rector of Politecnico di Milano for many years before, and Politecnico di Milano was I don't know if the oldest, but one of the oldest startup, because in 1871 it was created by Politecnico di Milano and founded also a small company that is Pirelli.
Not very well known.
And still is living, even if there is a change in the Fox. And was graduated from Politecnico di Milano, and he asked for the administration how to move for having startup. There was not the word startup or spin-off, but it was. And so there is a long history, not only Marconi and Meucci, but also with a startup company. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Mello, and thank you. Thanks for the invitation to Canadian companies and Canadian academics and researchers to come to your area park. I think that's one of the reasons why this excellent panel was put forward, to raise awareness of everything that's being done both in Canada and Ontario, across the country, but also in Italy. And so again, I commend the organizers and the Embassy of Italy and Carleton University for the excellent job that they have done. It's 2 minutes to 1. And this very august group stands between you and lunch. So at the risk of closing off the conversation, I would like to ask for your indulgence to thank the speakers and to ask them questions, if you will, during the lunch period. Thank you very much.
Thank you.